Welcome to the CEO.com show. My name is Clint Betts. On today's show, I talked to Greg Ho, who is the president, co-founder, and COO of Spring Mountain Capital. This guy's impressive. We've got an incredibly impressive guest today. He went to Yale. He started McKinsey's investment office. He was one of the first people at McKinsey. He talks a lot about McKinsey in this interview, what he's doing in Harlem and in New York City for underprivileged and other underrepresented groups is fascinating and really incredible. What he's doing in the life sciences. We had a really great conversation on all of this, including artificial intelligence, how that's going to affect life sciences, and all sorts of things. I mean, it was a pretty wide-ranging, very interesting conversation. This is a very, very impressive man. So let's get to him. Here's Greg Ho. Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show. You are the president and COO of Spring Mountain Capital. Tell us how all of that came to be. How did you get to be where you are?
I'll keep it short. I was at McKinsey Company, and one of the things I did while I was there, formed the McKinsey Investment Office, and then according to my game plan, I exited McKinsey when I was 45. Thought about what I want to do next 4 or 5 years, and then formed Spring Mountain Capital in 2001 with my partner Lonnie Steffens. And the emphasis has been on special situations investing, and we've done that over the last 20 years. And now I was turning to another part of what we wanted to do at Spring Mountain Capital, which was something that was meaningful within the community. And thus I formed a couple of years ago the social impact investing side of Spring Mountain Capital.
What is it about McKinsey that produces leaders like you and the people who go on to create like incredible companies like yourself? Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be at McKinsey? I mean, obviously there have been tons of books written about this company. It's the leading consulting firm in the world. It might be interesting for some people to know more about what your experience was like there.
Sure. I will put one caveat. I started at McKinsey in 1982, and I left it in 1996. So the answer that I give to your question pertains to the period then, for which I have a very good explanation. McKinsey basically was started by James Oscar McKinsey, but very early on, it was taken over by a fellow named Marvin Bower. And Marvin was a Harvard Law School person by training. And one of the things he brought to McKinsey was the concept of investing not for capitalist reasons, but for purpose. And one of the noticeable things that when you joined McKinsey back then was Marvin sent you a copy of his book, which is private, which we all promised not to share with anybody. It was titled Perspectives on McKinsey. And Marvin believed that the firm should not be operated on a financial basis. He was a believer in the philosophy that if you do the right thing, everything else will follow. And so there was a whole tradition of individuals that subscribed to that philosophy. And so there were individuals such as a fellow partner, senior partner named John Katzenbach, who wrote a book. I know you will probably ask about books I would read. I was very close to John, and he wrote the book, The Wisdom of Teams, and creating a high performance organization. So one of the things about McKinsey was they always thought about organizations and leadership and those themes of how to create a high performing organization. So now there, I was brought on not in a consulting role. I was brought on actually, I was McKinsey's first lawyer. And the project that, among the projects I was tasked with, was making the firm truly international. So we wanted at that time to be in the top 40 economies in the world. And at the time I joined, we were at about 8. And so the task ahead of me was opening offices in 32 new countries, which took me 16 years, going out and meeting the teams who proposed to go out there and figuring out how to do it. So 16 years, 32 countries later, I hit my target retirement date of 45 and announced I would leave the firm. But it was filled with individuals who thought about organizations and how to run them. So it's not only technically, but from the leadership angle. And then we espoused, basically, I was a little bit early, but I was very close to the partnership committees in terms of the future of partners, how to keep things open for young people coming up. And the philosophy was that by the time you get to age 50, you should begin to think about what your next act in life should be. So we were all encouraged to think about going out from the firm and doing something of significance outside the firm. So I would say that's the sort of longer answer to your question, but that's basically it.
I have to ask, what was your experience like conducting business in so many different countries and so many different cultures? What did you learn about differences and what did you learn about commonalities there?
Oh, it was really fun. The I really got a chance to see how different people think, how the systems that are put in place, the governing systems, reflect the way they think and execute various things. For example, tax laws, exchange control, ownership by local individuals if you want to come out as a big U.S. company, for example. But the very, very interesting thing was even though you had these very different viewpoints, it all boils down to the same thing. There is an underlying philosophy, culture, which actually unites everybody. So on one hand, seeing the differences, seeing the different approaches, and realizing that they all come together in the same place, and turned out it was a fascinating experience,
And
and
now,
therefore not as hard as one might expect.
yeah, that is actually fascinating. And now at Spring Mountain Capital, and you've started doing the social impact investing. I wondered, like, does that come from McKinsey? What makes you so excited about that? And how do you ensure? I always ask this question because I know a lot of different social impact companies. You may know some of them. A couple of them are in Utah, like Cotopaxi, which is an outdoor brand, and Warby Parker, these type Tom Shoes. These I'm thinking all consumer brands right now, but how do you ensure the companies you invest in are actually doing it for the right reasons and not because, man, it sounds good to be a social impact startup or company? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've looked at the area for quite some time, um, and first of all, to answer your first question, um, the uh, at this point I'm 72, and you go through your life journey, and basically, I was when I was in college, I studied motivation theory, and so everything goes back to Maslow's need hierarchy, and uh, in reality, social impact investing is just moving along that need hierarchy. You start with physiological needs and safety and security, um, love and belonging, self-esteem, and eventually, if you live long enough and you think about it hard enough, you get to the period of self-actualization. And that is, in one sense of the word, contributing back to the society and the community in doing something that's truly impactful and changes things. So after a long spell, I'm finally here. And when I thought about it, the thing is, I get that question all the time, the one you asked, in terms of how do you ensure that your companies are doing or on the path to social impact. Basically, we have in the project that I'm working on, which is called West Harlem Innovation Network, a guide as to what we will fund. Social impact investing can take various forms and go addresses various needs of the community. Ours is very specific. In the West Harlem Innovation Network, we will target companies that we believe will have a positive impact on the health and educational well-being of underrepresented minorities. So if you're not a company that can explain that, we're not looking at you. So first of all, your purpose, your reason of existence has got to be something that will improve the health and educational impact of underrepresented minorities. The second thing is we spent a lot of time taking a look at the team, talking about to them, not necessarily about the idea, but whether or not they are talented and passionate about the purpose, more so than the dollar figure. Are they, for example, in what I mentioned earlier, attempting to do the right thing, believing that everything will follow? And that's a very subtle thing that, there's no checklist that you do. You have to meet and talk with the individual to really believe that that is in their heart and in their mind and is what motivates them. So one thing is evaluation of the team. The third part, so purpose, team. Third part is we are multiple stage capital, and we start at the very beginning. So we will grow with you and hopefully mentor you and have you be loyal to the cause and have a fair amount of control over the process because we're multiple stage of capital. We won't be investing in a company and then handing it off for somebody else and losing purpose. We will adopt people we think are passionate, talented, true, and fund them as long as they do the second part of what we consider social impact, which is improving the economics of the community and providing higher paying job opportunities to members of the community. So in that way, we're pretty much aligned. I think purpose, result, the big topic. So in one sense, we are focused on neurodegenerative diseases, which is a very big concern to underrepresented minorities and socioeconomically disadvantaged individuals. And we may have some side impacts, but if you deliver an improvement along that path, I think you've delivered a pretty significant social impact. And if you've done it with people from the community, which is probably the strongest enabler, I think we have pretty good assurance that we'll stay on the track in our measurements of success. In this case, they're aligned.
Who have you invested in or who have you seen that does this really well, that has really served and gone above and beyond in ways maybe you didn't expect? Or maybe give us an example or two, whether it's somebody you've invested in or somebody you see who does this really well. I love the way that you think about this, your approach and the principles you have on this. It's pretty remarkable.
We've seen some companies that have come up with particular attention to the various factors of diversity in their ranks, participation by people from the community, and attention to a much neglected, overlooked demographic. So they're individual companies. We have not actually seen anyone do it in the manner that we intend to do it. Studio model in the community versus incubation of individuals who leave the community. So studio model in the community, hiring people from the community, looking for a fairly wide platform that can bring the synergistic capabilities when people are united in an effort. If one were to say, well, is that a little bit broad? Well, if you ask yourself, why is this particular demographic experiencing poor health results? And if you ask anybody who knows anything about business, there are several parts to the equation. Not several, there's a whole pile of parts of the equation. And so a single does not answer the question. It may have great impact, and I greatly admire those individuals, but I don't know of an example that is trying to bring the multiple parts of the equation together to approach the problem in a way that unleashes the synergies of multiple areas and multiple companies that approach the problem.
What does a typical day look like for you?
My father was a baker who held two jobs, and he used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when I wanted a car, asked me to drive him to work at 4 a.m. So I'm getting a little older, so I start up at 4:30 a.m., sort of in my DNA, and continue on through the rest of the day till I go to bed outside of time with family and my wife in terms of some leisure. But starts at 4:30.
Wow.
36 weeks of the year, it starts with some kind of training, which involved running. I run marathons, and I run marathons in the spring and the fall, and they're 18-week training programs. So 18 weeks in winter, early spring, I'm training with usually a run or cross training for about an hour to an hour and a half, and catching up on emails. Hopefully squeeze that all in before 8:30, 8 a.m. in the morning, where hopefully I show up at work.
That's incredible.
And then it's reading and interacting with individuals and doing, focusing on the main project as well as the running of Spring Mountain Capital. So Spring Mountain Capital also invests in special situations, which is how we started. It has a growth equity component, muni bond investing, and so forth. And we're adding to that a fund of funds business, and then we're adding to that social impact investing.
How do you decide where to spend your time each day? Like once you get to the office, how do you decide, here's what I'm going to focus on today? Here's what I'm going to be reading in depth about. Here's who I should be meeting with. How do you make those decisions?
Those order of priority, and the order of priority is getting West Harlem Innovation Network off the ground, and order of priority on that is making sure all of the components, the people are in place, and that if there's any new thing we ought to be looking at, that we add it. So anything that pertains to moving West Harlem Innovation Network takes first precedence. Obviously, there's the running of the firm, and the fact that I and my partner, Lonnie Steffens, are on every single one of the investment committees for the various other parts of the firm. There are scheduled meetings, and those things take place so that they don't get kicked off because they don't have the highest priority. So there are scheduled meetings. So outside of that, we stuff everything in between.
What do you read? I'm particularly interested in what you read when you first get into the office.
The I have news feeds on from a variety of sources on developments in life sciences. My main role in the West Harlem Innovation Network will be in the life sciences wing. So there are feeds from various sources reporting on developments, new papers, etc. There are alerts, and so catching up to that. The feeds are constant. They come in about 1,000 emails a day, and so they just come through. I don't have to select. It's in your face. And as I tell all of the young people we mentor, they should really like reading. I probably, if you say, what is the main activity of the day, it's reading. And if everything from emails to articles to papers, probably spend about 6 hours a day reading.
Yeah, what book recommendations would you have for us?
Book recommendations. Well, the let me go back to one that I think is very important because if we're talking about leadership and organizations and functioning, one of the books I think are seminal to my thinking is one written by my partner John Katzenbach. Right, that's the one I mentioned earlier, The Wisdom of Teams. Now there are many books on teams and so forth, and you could read that. But this is this is one of the seminal books that I think that is very important. It's very important this particular time as people begin to work away from teams, namely remotely, and really understand the book and the value, or believe in the value of the team. This helps you form. You can probably get over it by skimming it, but it gives you some very important principles to forming high performance teams. That's one book I would certainly. But now, in terms of the area that we're in, I find fascinating along topically in West Harlem Innovation Network, we will approach things like artificial intelligence. We will approach the question of bioethics. We'll approach the question of neurodegenerative diseases. And so the books that I find fascinating to help expand the platform of thinking versus a thing in particular is Max Tegmark's book, which he wrote before AI really sort of took its recent pop. Max Tegmark's book, Life 3.0. Very interesting book, which I read when it first came out, and I'm rereading currently. His book, the subtitle of the book is Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. So find that book very interesting. There's an entire discussion about the brain and thinking. There's several books in that. One I'm about to read, which is interesting topically because the researcher has done a fair amount of work in the area, is Charan Ranganath, and his book is titled Why We Remember. And the book's about brain plasticity, memory, recall, thinking, I think are very, very interesting. This ties into the topic of where are we headed with artificial intelligence? Where are we headed? Where's humanity headed in that? So that's another book which I'm aching to read. I haven't read it yet, but reputationally, the Sharon has done a fair amount of very, very interesting work. With respect to the area that we are in, and I think very significantly to inform us as we deal with underrepresented minorities. This book I became aware of. There's an author named Amy Chua, who is famous for Tiger Mom or whatever. But Amy Chua's book titled World on Fire, which we wrote some time ago, which talks about embedded minorities that become dominant minorities and then embedded into politics, really causes people to reject democracy and causes global instability. And it's really well worth reading as one thinks about the importance of crossing racial lines and incorporating underrepresented minorities. And it was very well received when it came out. It's really worth, wow, this was very prescient in terms of what has to be addressed and what we have to do and could do individually.
How do you think artificial intelligence is going to change life sciences? I know that's a very loaded question and probably something you're thinking about all the time, even reading about, as you mentioned before. But with the rise of AI and it kind of having its moment currently, like you said, what do you think? Like in particular, where things could get out of hand, I imagine, is in the life sciences area, if we're not careful. Or am I wrong about that?
I think other tools other than artificial intelligence is going to cause things to get out of hand. CRISPR, gene modification, and so forth. Now, in terms of first part of your question, in terms of artificial intelligence, I think it has potential, really, and this is not a earth-shaking statement, to really move us, accelerate the pace of personalized medicine and addressing some of the complicated diseases that beset us, from neurodegenerative diseases to cancer. Why is that? On one hand, we have better life science research tools, for example. Those life science research tools get to subcellular levels, they get into spatial omics. They really begin to understand the mechanisms by which which may or correlate, but certainly may explain why diseases happen. But there's so much data coming available that we're unable to process it and put it together to see if there is something that might accelerate our understanding. Secondly, I think it can put it together way beyond our capacity to process that information. We see it because one of the companies we've funded, when we funded it just a couple of years ago, it had 100 pieces of more data than one of the other large spatial omics firm. So 3 years later, we're 1,000 times more data than we were just 3 years back. And this is more data than scientists are able to process. It leads to advanced mathematics to develop the algorithms that actually show that there are things that we can't see through our senses that might cause the explanation from diseases. So I think there's some very, very interesting possibilities to understanding diseases that artificial intelligence, probably coupled with quantum computing, which I know is still a ways off, but to unleash what you could do with the vast amounts of data and artificial intelligence. I sense it's not my own conclusion. I sense there's a lot of excitement when we drill down to the researchers that this is the potential that artificial intelligence, large data sets, and quantum computing might put together to advance our state of understanding of complicated diseases.
Why West Harlem?
The proximity. I live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. On something new, as I said, no one's tried. There's no model to follow. I have to be there. I want to hire people from the community. Our team is a team that is not composed of investment bankers or long-term experience venture capitalists. It's a team of mentors. We mentor. Our value add is mentoring. We do have a wing that can figure out how to shape the deal and everything else. We have a lot of experience on that. But when you are in a studio model, long-term, new individuals fostering their passions and talent, you want mentors. Mentors, it's an in-person kind of thing. It's not a remote kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we're there, we're in Harlem. Secondly, we believe that to really make headway, you have trusted people, passionate people, and people from the community, and that means Harlem. We don't grow people that send them elsewhere. We grow people to stay within the community, build companies within the community, and then hopefully through their success and corporate largesse, addressing all the other things that have to be done in the community. So we're starting there. Hopefully some other people might decide to come along. We do have one associate who is from another city down the coast that is going to learn here and will probably go there, but it's an in-person kind of thing.
What do you think makes a great leader? Are there specific traits, specific, type of personalities? What makes a great leader? I mean, you've probably dealt with hundreds and hundreds of leaders. What is the commonality between all of them?
I think they have to really think they have insights versus be the smartest person. I think they have to be humble enough to realize they might not be the smartest person, might not know the answer, and therefore have an atmosphere where they have people who aspire to be where they are and feel that they can add to the equation. So the traits for a leader are to have a fair amount of self-realization, insight into themselves, the humility to believe, as good as they think they are, that there is more to be learned, to feel that also in this journey of getting through Maslow's need hierarchy, getting to self-actualization, that it's there in front of them, and the only way it will be achieved is through collective labor. So somebody who really understands and believes in the power of the team versus a conviction that one was born with all the things to solve all the problems of the world, and therefore a great desire to create the team. So that ambition to create a team creates the ambition to create the kind of leadership that I most admire.
What are your thoughts? Like, we're heading into an election year. I mean, we're in it, but we're heading kind of barreling towards an election here in November that I think is, bringing a lot of people uncertainty. The macroeconomic environment is really fascinating. There's good parts of the economy. There's really bad parts of the economy. There's people who are struggling. There's people who are doing really well. What are your thoughts on like just the macro environment we're in right now? And what are your expectations for how this year shakes out?
The Unfortunately, I'm not very optimistic
Yeah.
at all. I think we're getting uh, very strong signals, just like we are getting signals from the environment that bad things are going to happen unless something changes. And so the uh, I'm not at all optimistic about outcomes. The uh, I'm concerned about it. Uh, but I haven't given up, and so one should do their parts. And so the uh, without I don't think it's a particular issue that I would rather hang my hat on it. And it's not one party. I think it's actually a number of issues that people have got to come together and try to decide. Listen, I don't. It's more less important for me to have my way and my belief in the way to do things, as opposed to bringing the group together for a unified discussion and getting the compromises so we can take a step forward. Uh, the the Until more people do that, I think we're going to continue on the same trend we seem to be heading in terms of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, now, one of the very, very significant things is to get people in the room together more often. One of the very significant things is to get them maybe living together so they consider themselves as part of a community versus separate communities trying to make sure that they protect their way of living. And so my negativity perhaps drives uh, the urgency and importance of what I'm trying to do, which is do something in the city, bring people together in a issue of interest, and hopefully other people will have an example and decide to follow. Hopefully some people will listen to this and decide
Mm-hmm.
to adapt for themselves what they may think is a solution, and do it through bringing people together.
Finally, at CEO.com, we believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. And I wonder when you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
Uh, it started randomly with, I guess, in reality, the and I'm so sorry I forget his name, the admissions director of Yale University back in the 60s, who decided he'd expand the participation of underrepresented minorities and other people uh, into Yale. So, and this was not only Yale, some other schools, but that brought me out of where I was probably headed back into the University of Hawaii uh, or a Catholic university on the West Coast or the military, um, the out into the East Coast, and that was the break that you want. Having arrived there were other individuals who decided, just as we saw at McKinsey when we branched out to other individuals, someone who wanted to see the program through and adopted the individuals and mentored them into it. Because just because you're accepted in an organization does not mean that uh, uh, automatically get there. You got to there are a lot of other steps. So seeing the people who crossed the lines and decided to reach out is what caused it, and that was totally fortuitous.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Man, I've learned a lot in the short time we've been able to spend with each other. Best of luck with everything you're doing. Congrats on everything you're doing. What an incredible career. You don't look anywhere near 70, by the way. Like it seems like you got another 100 years left in you. So thank you so much for everything you're doing in the world.
Thank you very much, Clint. Really appreciate it. And this is a wonderful opportunity. And thank you very much. Uh, it started randomly with, I guess, in reality, the and I'm so sorry I forget his name, the admissions director of Yale University back in the 60s, who decided he'd expand the participation of underrepresented minorities and other people into Yale. So, and this was not only Yale, some other schools, but that brought me out of where I was probably headed back into the University of Hawaii or a Catholic university on the West Coast or the military, out into the East Coast. And that was the break that you want. Having arrived there, there were other individuals who decided, just as we saw at McKinsey when we branched out to other individuals, someone who wanted to see the program through and adopted the individuals and mentored them into it. Because just because you're accepted in an organization does not mean that you automatically get there. You got to there are a lot of other steps. So seeing the people who crossed the lines and decided to reach out is what caused it, and that was totally fortuitous.